Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our team project presentation in collaboration with the World DanceSport Federation, where we are tasked to create an anti-doping education program in response to the Paris 2024 Games. Before we get into the specifics of our project, I'll quickly like to introduce our team. On our team, we have Melisande, who's worked on the research and the overall benchmarking of the project. Vaughn, who's also helped with the benchmarking exercise and the creation of the toolkit. And myself, Ninad, who's worked on the marketing recommendations and plan coordination for the project. Now, we've often heard that life is better when you dance. We've also heard that, dance is magic, life is dance, dance is life. But over the last 9 months, what we've come to realize is there's more to this. And I'm sure a lot of us will agree to this, that life is better when you dance and you don't dope. And that is pretty much the context of a project that we have today, which reminds me why we are here today. Moving on to the brief and the recap of the project, our primary task is to develop an effective and long-term information and education anti-doping education program for dance sport. An outcome of this program would be a ready-to-use toolkit that the Federation can implement starting 2021, which will go on to the year 2024 in response to the Paris 2024 Games. Speaking of objectives, the World DanceSport Federation is signatory of the WADA code. It is also an IEAP recognized body for dance sport, which makes it imperative for them that it is their responsibility to create and promote an education program as far as clean sport is concerned, which brings us to the fact that there is a need for an in-house anti-doping education program, and which is why we are tasked to create a clean sport program for the Olympics. Moving on to the target audience, what we come to realize is moving basis the brief and the objective, it was necessary for us to dive into the target audience of the project. We're looking at age demographics. So there is no specific age category that we're looking at. The athletes range from as young as 7 to as old as 70. So we're looking at a diverse audience over there. There are a number of disciplines, right from Latin, standard, or even the modern day dance forms such as breaking, which is provisionally included in the Paris 2024 Games. Again, there's a lot of variety that we're looking at over there. And lastly, but the most important thing is dance is different. It is an artistic sport and hence needs to be dealt differently as compared to an endurance and a strength sport. Which brings us to the challenges. Before getting into the recommendations of the project, it was essential that we looked at the challenges that the Federation could possibly face as far as this education program is concerned. First and the foremost is it's a people-driven exercise. No matter what we do, no matter what recommendations we come up with, at the end of the day, the decision lies with that particular individual. It's a highly people-driven exercise. It's a dynamic and heterogeneous environment. We're dealing with a lot of stakeholders, NOCs, NFs, entourages, a lot of different athletes from different countries. So looking with a lot of different environment. This cultural diversity, as I said, athletes are coming from different countries. So there's a certain cultural perception that they have coming from their own countries. So again, we have to deal with that. This could be language barriers as well that we're looking at. So that is another challenge. Fourth, perception of extreme regulation. I mean, we've often seen that the entire anti-doping education initiative or the anti-doping initiative itself is often seen as an extreme regulation on athletes because at the end of the day, there is a penalty involved in that. So we're supposed to tackle that as well. And lastly, we're looking at a variety of target audience, as we said, right from the age of 7 to 70, there's a variety of target audience that we're looking at. Which brings us to the fact that before diving into the project, we had to do a thorough literature review and adopt a few methodologies on how we could deal with this particular project. And this is where I bring in my colleague Melly, who will take you through the literature review and the methodology part.
Thank you, Ninad, for this introduction. So this might not be the most glamorous part, but I'm going to take you through the literature review and the methodology, which helped us to first approach our topic and understand the context, and then the methodology helped us to reach our objectives. So talking about the literature review, we looked for articles and on two different aspects. So first the education, and then anti-doping in dance sport. So we realized that first of all, WADA is the #1 reference in the field of anti-doping education. And education really asks for persuasion and information. But for now, there is really few content and there are few studies on how to build and create an anti-doping education program. So we had more freedom for that. Regarding doping in dance sports, it's a very peculiar and recent topic, and there are some specific issues like the use of nutritional supplements and recreational drugs. Next slide, please. About the methodology, so we chose to use 3 different methods. First, the very basic but necessary desk research, first to understand the WDSF state on anti-doping education, and then WADA and all the guidelines. Then we had to do some benchmarking because this really helped us to get some inspiration and gather qualitative data through interviews. And we are very lucky that many alumni and contacts responded to our demands. Then the most exciting part, and the one we were the most enthusiastic about, the marketing, because this really helped us to be creative. This really allowed us, to be creative for the campaign, for the toolkit, but we also had to reflect and to be precise when it went to create a plan for the implementation of the toolkit. So now I'm gonna go through the benchmarking. And this, as I said, was our main source of inspiration. And first we had to choose 3 different federations. We tried to come up with some bigger and smaller federations, but most of all with federations who were part of the Olympics and who had interesting programs. The first one was ISU, which really has a brilliant program called Pure as Ice. And it's really creative, really engaging, and also very well documented online. They are present at competitions, which is quite uncommon. And they also have their own content. They still use WADA resources, but most of all, it's very engaging. Then we thought about studying FIBA. So next slide, please. And their Clean Game campaign. It was very complete and a very clear campaign also with a very clear branding. They have all the must-haves. And again, the branding is very important in this one, but also they have goodies, which are quite cool actually, and good content that they created, just like videos. They have a partnership with NBA, so that's really cool. Then most important one, because it's the reference in the world of sport, FIFA, and their Show Doping the Red Card program. So they have well thought content like the 11 rules, which are very creative. It's comprehensive, it's very specific to football. And also, again, they're engaging with the athletes, which is the most important. And they have very good content, just like videos, testimonies, and so on. Then we go to 2 maybe smaller federations, but still very interesting in terms of anti-doping education programs. So we have the FIA and FISU, which have very good content as well. First of all, they have all the basics, the must-haves, and they use WADA tools, which again is a reference. And also they created their own content, just like the video of the FIA, which was really of interest for us, and the booklet that FISU, that the FIA created, and then FISU has a very good integration of the WADA tools on their website. So overall, this really helped us to get some creative inspiration, to gather data, but most of all to come up with our own recommendations. And this is where I invite my colleague Won to go through this aspect of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Meli, for the methodology and benchmarking results. So after conducting benchmarking, we realized that we need a strong campaign name, an overarching brand that oversees all activities. So under our brand, we have divided our assets into digital and non-digital, along with different levels of importance. Level 1 being the must-haves and level 2 being the nice-to-haves. So for digital assets, we heavily highlighted on the existence of anti-doping specific website, either within the original website or a completely new anti-doping dedicated website. For non-digital assets, we recommended educational PowerPoints, brochure, and infographics, which can be converted into digital-based assets as well. Next slide, please. So our toolkit, just to reiterate, these are our level 1 recommendations, the must-haves, the website, the master presentation, the brochure, and the infographics. And since what are included in our presentation are just overviews of our collaterals, we have provided printouts that represent the actual contents of our deliverables. Our campaign name, before we head straight into our deliverables, we wanted to show everyone of our campaign name and how it was developed. While brainstorming, we came up with about 10 to 15 different names that stimulate dance sport and anti-doping. However, we have shortlisted that into 4 different recommendations: True to Groove, Dance Clean, Purely Dance, and Dance True. Out of 4 candidates, we got the approval on Dance Clean with a newly designed logo as well. Next, please. So let's go a little more technical with our deliverables. First being our website, which we have included a complete sitemap. Our anti-doping education program will be presented within the already existing website. Under the section anti-doping, we will showcase our Dance Clean program, its initiatives, and most importantly, our hashtag Dance Clean. So under our program, we will have 3 different layers of essential and engaging information for all stakeholders to understand and potentially avoid anti-doping rule violations. So we have 3 different sections: the introduction to anti-doping, the education platforms, and resources with brochures and infographics, along with WDSF doping regulation. Our second deliverable, master presentation, it will be utilized for education purposes before, during, and after events like the World Championships for athletes, physicians, coaches, and anyone involved. And it will look something like what is on the left side of the presentation. And a few tips as consultants we highlighted on the maximum 1-hour time limit and creativity plus engagement, since we did not want the participants to lose attention and miss out on the important aspects. If we go a little more deeper, we're asking to cover 10 different topics: the introduction, code of ethics, what is doping, how to avoid anti-doping rule violations, athlete rights, and most importantly, contact information so that athletes can reach out. Depending on different changes happening in the WADA code or the WDSF code of ethics or regulations, this PowerPoint can be constantly updated, but the structure will be identical for the time being. Our next and our third deliverable is the brochure. While benchmarking, we realized that international federations with successful implementation of anti-doping education program have a very clear, concise, and information-rich brochures. So contents will include what is doping, educate yourself, reliable information sources, and summary for athletes, etc. And on the right side of the presentation, here is the sample we have created in terms of basic design and structure of the front page of the WDSF's brochure. And last but not least, we wanted to concentrate on the infographics. So when you have a brochure, why do you want to make infographics? The reason is pretty simple. We want to dissect a complex subject in a very simple way. And that's why we chose infographics. By using different numbers, color schemes, and pictograms, we intend to sustain the attention of readers and help cover heavy topics in a very easy way. And here are some of the samples that we created. First one is the 8 counts of anti-doping, just 8 different principles of anti-doping. And the second one is the infographic about the whereabouts. So what are some of the other ideas we can explore? We've actually come up with master video program at launch, short animated videos on YouTube or any other social media platforms, merchandise, testimonial videos, webinar series, an in-house quiz, plus e-learning module for better education, mobile application for more complexity, and ambassador program, photo booth mixing with social media giveaway events to further maximize our anti-doping brand Dance Clean, monthly newsletter, and lastly, social media campaigns to show and let people know of our brand and our initiatives. And that will be all for our recommendations. And now I will invite my colleague Ninad back to speak about our marketing strategies.
We have a beautiful campaign name, which is Dance Clean. We have a lot of toolkit elements that we plan to take it to the market. So this is where we thought that it's essential that we came up with a plan on how could we launch the entire program over the next 4 years. So going through the specifics of this, The 2020 year is dedicated towards creation of the actual toolkit that we saw, such as content, design, and everything. And starting 2021 is when we implemented. So the best idea is to launch the program at the WDSF Annual Congress, followed by a lot of press releases and personal letter from the chairman of the Anti-Doping Commission to all the stakeholders, informing them that the program is launched. Supported by a social media campaign on WDSF social channels about the fact that the dance clean is an education program that has been launched. And lastly, supported with a lot of infographics. We move on to the year 2022, where we introduce a lot of new elements while continuing that we've done in the previous year as well. So we move on to short animated videos and merchandises. Examples of short animated videos could be you're doing a 30-40 second video on what is WADA, or what are whereabouts, or what are TUEs. Just very short topics so that the athletes can understand them in detail. We move on to the year 2023, which is the most crucial year because this is just 1 year before the Paris 2024 Games, and hence the activities need to be in full swing. So we're introducing a lot of new elements. We introduce a lot of testimonial videos, webinar series, its own mobile application so that if there are any integrity related issues, the athletes can report them. WDSF anti-doping quiz, our initial suggestion for the time being is to go with the WADA playthrough quiz, but eventually over the next few years, it is good that the WDSF develops their own anti-doping quiz. And lastly, the Dance Clean Ambassador program, which the Federation can launch. Moving on to the first 5 months of the 2024 year, it's good that we have special promotion campaigns, webinar series, and infographics very specifically around the content of the Paris 2024 Games so that the athletes have a certain focus on that. And with this, it brings us to our conclusions and the most exciting part because this really validates our program. We came up with a bunch of campaign names and we suggested them to the Federation, and we received approvals on the campaign name Dance Clean, which gave us the pathway that we could develop a few components for the toolkit. We received the approval for the primary toolkit component as well, which is the master presentation, the brochure, infographics, and the website, from which we moved on to the creation of the toolkit content, where we actually developed the literal content for the brochure, PPTs, and the website sitemap that we've seen. From there, we've received the approval from the toolkit content, which led us to the creation of the go-to-market plan so that we could take the program out in the market over the next 4 years. And we've lastly received approvals on the go-to-market plan as well, which leaves us with only one thought, that Paris 2024 awaits Dance Clean. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, team.